The Sangre de Cristo Conspiracy. Chapter 5. The Keeper of Sacred Things. The bells of San Jerónimo de Taos were tolling for vespers, their mournful, clangorous notes echoing across the plaza as Marshal Sam Hartwell made his way towards the ancient mission church. The sound, a centuries-old call to prayer, seemed to hang heavy in the air, a somber counterpoint to the undercurrent of fear and suspicion that had gripped the town since Montoya's murder. The church, a massive adobe structure with its iconic twin bell towers, stood as a weathered sentinel at the edge of the old Taos Pueblo, a testament to the enduring, often fraught history of Spanish faith in this remote corner of the world. Hartwell had always found these old missions both imposing and strangely poignant. They were the symbols of conquest and conversion, yet also of deep faith and incredible resilience. Their thick walls having witnessed countless cycles of peace and rebellion, hope and despair. As an American and a nominal Protestant, he felt the weight of that history, the cultural chasm that often separated him from the deeply ingrained Catholicism of the Mexican and Pueblo people he now served. He found Father Miguel Santos not in the main sanctuary, but in a small, sparsely furnished office adjoining the sacristy. The priest was a man of indeterminate middle age, his frame lean, almost ascetic, his dark hair streaked with gray at the temples. His face, deeply lined, was that of a scholar, but his eyes, dark and piercing, held a shrewdness that suggested he was no stranger to the temporal world and its machinations. He rose as Hartwell entered, his black cassock rustling softly. There was a palpable aura of quiet authority about him, different from the alcalde's bluster or Elena's pragmatic command, but no less potent. "Marshal Hartwell," Father Miguel said, his voice a low baritone, surprisingly resonant. "I was expecting you. News of your inquiries travels swiftly in a parish as tight-knit as Taos. Please, sit." He gestured to a simple wooden chair. The room was cool, smelling faintly of parchment, beeswax, and incense. A crucifix hung on the whitewashed wall above a small desk, clustered with books and papers. It was a stark contrast to the opulent chaos of Montoya's study or the vibrant commerce of Elena's trading post. "Father Santos," Hartwell began, placing his hat on his knee. "Thank you for seeing me. As you know, I'm investigating the death of Don Carlos Montoya and the disappearance of what he called the Sangre de Cristo cache." Father Miguel steepled his fingers, his expression grave. "A terrible tragedy, Marshal. Don Carlos, for all his worldly focus, was a son of the church, and the cache, its recovery was something we had prayed for, though perhaps with less public fanfare than Don Carlos employed." Montoya's journal. It indicated he'd been in communication with you, Father, regarding the trade. "Indeed," the priest affirmed. "When Don Carlos first confided in me months ago that he believed he was close to locating these lost relics, I was, of course, profoundly interested. The Sangre de Cristo cache, as it has come to be known, is reputed to contain not just silver and gold, but items of immense spiritual significance to our faith. Chalices, monstrosities, perhaps even devotional artworks, consecrated items plundered from our missions during the dark days of the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. Their return to the church would be a joyous event, a mending of a tear in our sacred history. His words were measured, eloquent, painting the church's interest in the most pious of lights. Hartwell listened, his gaze steady. And did Don Carlos discuss his plans for these artifacts with you, specifically how they would be handled once recovered? A flicker of something, caution, perhaps, or disapproval, crossed the priest's face. Don Carlos was enthusiastic. He spoke of the treasure enriching the territorial coffers, of bringing prominence to Taos, to himself. I reminded him gently that any consecrated items belonged by sacred right and by historical precedent to the Holy Mother Church. Their value is not in pesos, Marshal, but in the connection to God and the legacy of faith in Islam. Did he agree with that assessment? Hartwell pressed. Father Miguel sighed, a hint of ecclesiastical wariness in his tone. Don Carlos was a practical man, Marshal. He understood the church's claim, but he was also under pressure from Santa Fe to deliver tangible assets to the new government. I believe he was wrestling with how to reconcile these competing interests. Competing interests, Hartwell repeated. His journal mentioned an American, Mr. Smith, who proposed selling some of these artifacts to private collectors in the East. Was the church aware of this plan? The priest's dark eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Smith? I am not familiar with that name. Don Carlos did not mention such an individual to me. Selling sacred relics to private collectors. He shook his head, a look of genuine dismay on his face. That would be sacrilege, Marshal. A profanation. Were these items to fall in such hands, it would be a grievous sin, and a profound loss to our community's spiritual heritage. Hartwell watched it. The priest's indignation seemed sincere, yet Montoya's journal was clear. Was it possible Montoya had kept this particular negotiation from the priest, knowing he would disapprove? Or was Father Miguel being less than forthcoming? Don Carlos, he also mentioned pressure from what he called the old families, descendants of Spanish colonials, who believed the cash was their ancestral right. Father Miguel nodded slowly. Yes, the echoes of temporal pride. There are those among the old landed gentry who cling to the glories of the Spanish crown, who view the Mexican Republic with suspicion, and American encroachment with outright hostility. They see these artifacts not as items of faith, but as symbols of their lost dominion, family heirlooms on a grand scale. I have counseled them that such worldly attachments are vanity, but all pride, Marshal, dies hard. Can you name any of these families, Father? Those who might have been most vocal or most capable of asserting their claim? The priest hesitated, his gaze distant for a moment. The Romero family is prominent and fiercely proud of their lineage. Don Diego Romero considers himself a guardian of the old ways, and the Ortegas, though their fortunes have dwindled, still command a certain respect, or perhaps fear, among some. They are passionate people. They might see Montoya's control of the cash as an affront. He paused. But murder, Marshal? That is a grave accusation to lay at the feet of such families without proof. I am laying no accusations, Father, Hartwell said. I am merely trying to understand the landscape of Don Carlos's final days. He was a man standing at the confluence of many powerful currents. Indeed? Father Miguel leaned forward slightly. And what are the American traders, Marshal? I hear whispers in the plaza. Strong whispers. That their resentment of Don Carlos's taxes boiled over. Such men, many of them, have little respect for our laws, our faith, or our ways. They see only profit. It was a sentiment Hartwell had heard from Alcalde Vigil, and now from the priest. A convenient narrative, painting the outsiders as villains. The murder weapon may have been a hawk and rifle, Father, but many men own such a weapon. I am keeping an open mind. A wise precaution, Marshal, Father Miguel conceded, though his tone suggested he held his own convictions. The Church decides only truth and justice, and, of course, the safe return of any sacred items that may have been part of the stolen treasure. If there is any way I can assist your investigation, spiritually or temporally, you need only ask. Well, your insights have been helpful, Father, Hartwell said, rising and taking his hat. One more thing. This Mr. Smith, the American artifact dealer, if he were trying to operate discreetly in Taos, trying to make contact with someone who might have access to such items or knowledge of them, where might he turn? Besides Montoya, I mean. Father Miguel considered this, his head tilted. Someone with knowledge of local history, perhaps. Someone familiar with antiquities. But operating outside the church or the established families, it is possible. Taos attracts all sorts. Seekers of fortune, seekers of knowledge, seekers of escape. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought. There is an American newcomer, I am told, lodging at the Garcia house, a Mr. Abernathy. He has been making inquiries at the pueblo, asking to see old records, mission baptismal logs. He represents himself as a scholar of history. Perhaps his interests might align with this Mr. Smith, or he might have encountered him. Abernathy again. Elena had mentioned him. The confirmation from Father Miguel made this lead stronger. A scholar of history, asking about old records. It was certainly plausible he might cross paths with someone looking to acquire historical artifacts. Thank you, Father, Hartwell said. You've given me much to consider. May God guide your efforts, Marshal, the priest said, a calmness in his voice that Hartwell found surprisingly comforting, despite his own reservations. And may he bring these sacred treasures back to their rightful home. As Hartwell stepped out of the cool dimness of the priest's office and back into the fading sunlight, the vesper bells had ceased their tolling. A quiet hush had fallen over the church grounds. He thought of the complex web Montoya had been caught in, the government's need for funds, the church's claim on sacred relics, the old family's assertions of heritage, and the shadowy dealings of Mr. Smith. Each faction had a powerful motive. He thought, too, of Elena Vasquez's words about Eli Bear Thompson and his mountain men. While the priest and the alcalde were quick to point fingers at the Americans, Elena had offered a more nuanced view. Thompson was a wild card in this deadly game. Hartwell knew that sooner or later he would have to confront that element of the mystery directly. But first, Mr. Abernathy, the scholar lodging at the Garcia house. Two separate, credible sources had now pointed him in that direction. It was time to see what man of books knew about the bloody business of stolen treasure in the Sangre de Cristo mountains. The path was still murky, but with each conversation, a little more of the landscape was illuminated.